How are you guys?
Fine, thanks.
Fine. So, I have many things to tell you. The first thing is that I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to be here. Actually, I've been making presentations and organizing events almost everywhere, and it's the first time that I'm coming to talk in Murska. Actually, I live just 30 kilometers away. I'm not the only one. The past week, I met one guy, pretty amazing person, startup owner, co-founder of a very cool company, and we went for Malica, and he said exactly the same thing. I have never been invited to an event in Murska. This guy is traveling all around the planet, you know, quite crazy. So really great for this. Thank you. When you've seen a lion, have you seen a lion in real life?
Yes. In the zoo.
In the zoo, right? But you have seen it, right? So it's pretty powerful, right? But from where he gets the power? It looks like a very philosophical kind of question, but there's nothing wrong with philosophy actually. But it's pretty incredible to imagine that an animal that doesn't know anything about the internet is so powerful. So, okay, that's just a question. I have no answer yet. So, just remember a few years ago, your parents came to you and said, hey, we're going for holidays, right? And they said, we're going for camping. So you run to your room or wherever in your house to find out maybe, hey guys, don't go. And you went there to find out, for example, your flashlight, your backpack, and all the things that you imagine are going to be useful for your own adventure, right? I remember clearly when I was a kid, and I was carrying all these things with me. That feeling, can you relate to that feeling? Right? That feeling is what I call entrepreneurship. Okay, and that's a very natural way of thinking about it, but it's not the modern way of thinking about it. So I come to find a very big confusion. Because if you ask a startup owner or founder, what is entrepreneurship, they define startup. They don't define the entrepreneur. Therefore, we go to start believing that if I want to be an entrepreneur, I have to be a startup. Do you understand? It's not real. It's not true. So I try to find out a different way of understanding this thing. Okay? So I ask myself from where the word entrepreneur comes. And it's pretty amazing. So my native language is Spanish. And we have a word, and that word is empresa. Okay? If you go today to any Spanish speaking place, empresa means business. Right? But if you would go, I don't know, 30 years in the past, empresa is not only a business, it's basically an adventure. And the person, for example, we decide to climb the Triglav, we're going to build up our empresa. Okay? So all this coordination of which are the things we need to do in order to achieve our adventure is called empresa. Therefore, the person that goes into that adventure is, in Spanish, empresario. Now, the word empresario went really, really hard into the business side, but there's another word that is coming from French that is emprendedor. And emprendedor is the entrepreneur. So then what's the definition of entrepreneur? It's basically a person that wants to take a risk and decides to make action. So when you hear the startup community telling, act, do it now, it's precisely that. But it's not doing it just because you have to do it. It's basically doing it because you want to. You don't need anyone to tell you that you have to do it. right? If you don't want to do it, if you don't have the energy, well, you have two choices, right? For not doing it or doing it. But basically, is remember the kid, right? That is there, so cute. Is the power that comes after realization. So, but do you see the plane of this guy? He failed, right? The plane that took hours to the parents to build or buy or whatever you want fell down and crashed. And then you see his face, right? He's smiling because even the failure is smaller than the energy he had in the moment, right? So that's the amazing stuff. So if we talk about failure, basically that face tells it everything. There's nothing about failure. I'm going to define failure a bit later. Oh man, so just a couple of years ago, I was not in Precmuria. I moved to New York for a couple of years project. And to be honest, well, America is awesome, it's really nice. But there were some things I didn't like. And my family agreed with me. So we said, you know what, let's go back home. And I said, well, yeah, okay, let's go back home, but there's a main problem there. I closed my company in Slovenia. You have no job, talking to my wife, and I will have no job either. So, which are the alternatives we have? So, to be honest, we didn't have many, and thankfully, when you are an entrepreneur or you want to start up something here, at least your kids can go to the school. You don't have to pay for that. At least you have coverage for healthcare and all these kind of things. In Peru, in my country, forget about it. In America, well, you have to have the money first. So this is a fantastic place where to start businesses. So where are we going, right? So we go back. I had to redefine everything for my life. And the first thing that I said is, I don't want to be an IT anymore. Jesus, that's a big decision that I didn't know how big it was until I came here, you know? So I went to talk with a lot of people. I had the good luck of speaking with one management guru, 83 years old, around at that time. And I said, you know, Professor Shine, I'm a bit confused because I'm not completely sure what I like in my life, what I like doing, right? And he was laughing and he said, you might be around 40 years old, right? And I said, well, yes, exactly, just in a few months I'm going to have 40. Well, that's the crisis, right, that you have to prepare for. And then I made like that in my head and I figured out it was true. So, man, who I am, right? At 40 years old, what am I going to do? So, Professor Shine, can you tell me a bit more? Maybe you inspire me. And he made some questions to me, and he said, come on, you're an entrepreneur. What? Yeah, I always started my own businesses. I never wished to be employed. Actually, I was unemployable everywhere I was. So, yeah, great, I believe on that. I went to study, I went to research, I went to even classes of yoga to find out if that's true. Yeah, don't laugh so much. And I come up with the realization of saying, okay, I like traveling. I'm going to make a company related to traveling. I called it Lincoln Island. And I made something called networking expeditions. And I thought it was a brilliant idea. So that's the moment when I start building up a vision, building up where am I going next, okay? Where are we going? So I was thinking on me as an individual, and I was thinking how am I going to affect the environment around me. But it flopped. It didn't went well. So even by planning, even by searching inside of your heart, you find out, bullshit, it doesn't work. Man, where are we going next, right? So I was ready to drop the towel and to say, you know what, this is not working. And I went to Podium, an event for business in Maribor, And there was Andra's story as a keynote speaker saying something that was totally amazing. How are we telling that this is an international conference and our keynote speakers are speaking in Slovene language? Aren't we learning from our failures? That's what he said. I had some foreigners beside me. They were clapping, you know? So, wow, how was this strong message? And I tweeted with the hashtag of the event, if someone would like to organize an event about failure. And I got few responses. And a few weeks later, I went to meet Andras. Andras introduced me to Matej Golov. Matej Golov knows everybody in the planet. So he introduced me to everybody that you can imagine. And in maybe a week, I had a team of 14 persons telling me I want to work on the project of building up this conference. So basically, it was not planned. I led beside the entire project of Lincoln Island to embrace what was rising up as an opportunity that was basically the fear and faith. I will tell you more about it. So where do you want to go? Right? That's really basic and important question. And the majority of the people will say, well, I'm not 100% sure yet. Or a lot of people is going to say, first I get the money and then I decide. Right? But then there's a very big problem with that approach. And if you don't get the money, you can't go forward, right? You can't move forward. So, okay. I wanted to say something about vision afterwards, but I'm going to tell it now. Do you know what a vision is? In comparison with a mission and all this management crap, right? So the truth is that a vision is just a dream that motivates you so much that you want to do it, right? So there are two kinds of visions, according to what I researched. One is the vision that builds up on the future. So they tell you, for example, Ford says that they want to be the biggest provider of car technology, equipment, and blah, blah, blah in the world. But if Ford would be today a new company, how are the employees going to feel until they achieve that goal? They will feel that they have to do a lot, and they're never arriving to the right place, right? Now Disney has a different one. Disney says, we want to make people happy. It doesn't matter when. So if you ask yourself, can they make people happy today? Yes. Even if Disney is a one-person company. Right? So when thinking where to go next, I would highly recommend, and this is starting to work with me, to have a vision that you can realize today. If you start coming with a, I want to change the world, well, think twice. Right? Because basically what is going to happen is like in Lincoln Island, that the project flops and you change nothing, right? So if you find it out by yourself, if something comes to you that aligns to your vision, then that's perfect. It doesn't matter what are you going to be doing. So, okay, that's about it. Yeah, the time passes, right? Well, it passed faster to me than to you. And you see, do you know what to do? How are you feeling? Maybe a bit anxious? Right? Well, at least everyone in my generation is feeling pretty anxious. Nobody knows what to do, there's no money anywhere. Look what he has to say. I define anxiety and experiencing failure as experiencing failure in advance. That's crazy awesome, you know? Do you know what failure is? Could someone tell me what do they think about failure? Or how would you
chance to make it next time better?
Okay, that's a pretty nice thing, because it's a very positive outlook of what failure is, right? And anxiety. So as soon as you feel anxious, remember this stuff. You're experiencing failure that didn't happen. Right? That's so key. I mean, really, memorize it. I will tell you more about failure. When we don't know what is going to happen, and we imagine that something is going to go wrong, we call it failure. That's it. There's nothing more about failure you can talk about. That's why we made our event called Fear and Failure. Because basically, failure is nothing. It's just a word. Yeah, but someone is going to tell, come on, Jose, I mean, I had a miserable failure. You're going to tell me that it's not failure? Okay, so just imagine this is the first girlfriend or boyfriend you had in the past. So you go like, in your case, like 3 years ago. And this guy or this girl let you alone and your heart was broken, right? Okay, you will see when 5 years passes and you look back into that situation, you might find out that thank God this happened. Right? Because you found the other couple or because this person was crazy or whatever you want. So when failure happens in the past, it becomes something different. It becomes experience. And it just opens some different doors that you have no idea were going to happen. Obviously, right? We don't know the future. So so remember about this. Failure happens. So the worst case scenario happens. It goes away. It just becomes experience. It depends on your attitude. Okay? Good. So, what is success? I like this success stuff because all of us are trying to find and design our lives based on success. So you are all the time saying, I want to be a successful entrepreneur, doctor, father, mother, whatever. Oh man, it never comes. I can tell you, I have 41 or 42, and so far it never came. Right? But then, in the middle of the crisis there in New York, I was in one of my classes, and it was a classes of video editing or something like that. And there was a porno photographer there that was pretty interesting and good friend of me. And there was a huge American, very old, and he worked with video making for trains and I don't know what. And I had to talk about my project, and my project was one day in the life of Jose. So pretty interesting. And the American guy stopped me in the middle of my presentation, and he said, "You know what? You know, guy, you're having me really nervous here. This is one day in the life of Jose, and you said the word success 20 times. Are you trying to convince me that you're a success, or are you trying to convince yourself that you are a success?" Shit. I was with the pants down. And then Yumiko, my porno friend, said to interrupt painfully, and she said, "You know, Jose, I know about your life, right? So you said you were born in Peru, you had a good education, a nice family, you build up your career working there with Microsoft, and then when they offer you the real job, you decide to say no because you're going to get married this Prekmurka. And then you go to Slovenia, you get in good relationship with Microsoft there, you start making your business and everything starts growing. You decide to go to New York, and because of your principles, you decide to go back to where you belong. You have two wonderful kids and healthy. And you are telling that you are not successful. Wow, what a strong thing, right? So then I find out that you cannot find success in the future. You can only find it in the present. So you cannot wish to be successful. You have to be successful today. And the only way of being successful today, in my life, is finding out what I already did. Not what I didn't make, right? What I made already. What is there concrete that I can say, that's success. Right? So, if you're thinking in the future, it's going to happen what Seth Godin says. You're going to be all the time anxious, trying to get the money that is not coming. Right? Okay? I will not tell you too much about the status quo, but it's only that in my life status quo starts when I start saying no to possibilities. Right? So I start discovering, oh man, I don't want to go that place right now. I'm very comfortable. That's the status quo. That's the situation that seems to be perfect. I will not go out of this job because they are paying me a salary. Right? So I left the other things that I would like to do beside. This is awesome. If you continue trying to protect that status quo, so the things how they are today, you have to be so cautious, so not making any change, right? That when you find out, you did nothing. Right? So you did nothing in your entire life. This is fantastic, right? You failed by default. At the end, playing safe is very risky, right? Just because of what Rowling said before. So, if you are thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur, if you are thinking to make a change in the world, if you start understanding what fear is and what failure is, start thinking clearly about this. Are you playing safe? If you are not taking risk, obviously measure risk. I'm not telling you to jump into a swimming pool without water, right? If you find yourself, if you catch yourself playing the safe way, you are going away from the concept of being an entrepreneur. What's the difference between improvement and growth? Any idea? So, if I tell you, guys, here you have something to improve, how do you feel? Okay, don't tell. So, you say, you use the word improvement when you think that there is something wrong already. You start from below. So if I have to improve, that means that there's something wrong with me. Even if you're not really thinking it consciously. Yeah? But if I have to tell you, guys, we need to grow, you don't feel the same pressure, right? It's a bit easier to work with you, right? There's an unconscious part in the brain that understands those words, right? And even we don't have it consciously, it damages the way we perform. So let's talk about growth. We're going to become a bit romantic. So I have these orchids at home. Someone gave them to me, and they were very flowery, beautiful. I put them in my office, and the flowers fell down. And then I was putting water every week according to all the specifications and everything. And the plant was alive, but not flowering at all. What the heck to do with this? So you know what? I gave up, and I gave it to my wife. 2 weeks later, new things started growing, and the flowers came up. This is wrong with me, right? Again, with me. And well, she used some, I think you call it Marillo, and it was in a window with more light, etc., etc. So, quite amazing. But what is the relationship between growth and improvement? I thought the plant was wrong, right? That's why I gave it away. But she didn't think it was wrong. It was just not nourished. So what happened is that I was not providing the right conditions for the plant to grow. So now you go home and ask your parents, hey parents, are you giving the right conditions for me to be great? Or in the company, right? Are you giving me the right conditions for me to be innovative? And then you have the solution to half of the problems, because you will see that they are not providing the conditions. But more critical than that, are you creating the conditions for having a fantastic entrepreneurial life? Maybe not. Maybe you're only complaining, like me. So this question is, it's totally important, right? Understanding the definition of what growth is can definitely help you to grow. But there's something else about growth. Have you seen plants growing in the garden in winter? No, right? So we have seasons as well. So when you are not in the productive moment, do not punish yourself, right? Just remember, it might be the low season. There's no need. Just ask yourself, which ones are the conditions? Are you providing the right conditions for you to grow? If yes, and anyway you want to stay in the bed, stay in the bed, right? No hard feelings with yourself. So that's my story about growth. I hope you keep it present. Which are the right conditions for innovation? How are we with time? Okay, we have 5 minutes more. When is the last time that you heard the word imagination in a business environment? When talking about startups or when talking about business? We forgot it. We forgot that word. And in my case, it's very important because I'm very imaginative, right? And actually, I was much more imaginative when I was a kid. And I want to go back to that time, right? I think it was Einstein that said that imagination is everything. There's nothing else if there's no imagination. Because after you imagine the vision that we talked, you can start creating and inventing. Now, there's another concept that I found that's so interesting about creativity. Have you figured that when we talk about creativity, we know graphic designers and the rest of. So, well, I had to be reading a lot of books to find out what really creativity is. And the first one is the dictionary, right? And the dictionary just says something very clear. It's the act of transforming a thought into a real thing. But do you have to create a real thing, so a material thing, in order to be creative? And then I found out that it's not necessary. So there's an example of a guy that receives the possibility of going to present his CV to apply for a job. So, and the guy is very nervous, right? And he starts thinking, what do I need to do to get the job? So he shaves, he wears the best thing he has, and he goes with the brightest printed, thick paper CV. And he thinks that the presence is a very important influencer to get the job. He arrives to the place and he finds that the two persons that are going to interview him are in bad mood, right? Actually, they are in a very big rush. They don't pay attention, they check the paper, they put it together with a pile of other ones. Thank you, goodbye. Okay. Can he really influence, or can he really create the expectation of getting the job? I personally think not. I think he can influence, but he has no opportunity of influencing. When we create attachments, or when we create expectations to the actions we do, we are not being creative. We're being hopeful. Right? So we're expecting that the other people is going to make a decision compatible with what we want to do. That's being powerless. We're giving them the power to decide for something that will make us feel happy or not. And but if we use the concept of creativity, I could decide to be as friendly as possible and to create a space where I could share at least something about me. That might be risky, right? That might be the reason why they are going to say no, or say you cannot work with us. But it doesn't matter. The thing is that when I go to the meeting, I get satisfied with the expectation I create and with the creativity of building up the space, right? It sounds very weird, right? But Just try it. So creativity. Then invention, well, you know what is invention, right? So just discovering something new, trying to make it happen. But all of these things require of some special conditions. And those conditions, well, are not the same for every different environment, so this is something you must find out. This is key, and that's why the movement of startups and entrepreneurship is becoming so important. Because we are tired of going back home feeling like we did a bad day, or that we are powerless, or etc. We want to have this satisfaction, this quality of life. Actually, I live in Slovenia because here I can have a high quality of life. In other places, it is much harder, right? So returning from work feeling inspired, safe, fulfilled, and grateful is a natural human right to which we are all entitled, and not a modern luxury that only a few lucky ones are able to find. So if you create your own job, or if you work for someone and you can't feel like that, there's something wrong there. There's a need of changing the conditions. And an entrepreneur, as Richard Branson, for example, they would say, I define the rules, I create the rules. And that is not the same than saying, I'm going to be illegal. But I'm going to find where is the space where I can create new rules in order to expand my possibilities. So don't feel disempowered when you go to a job position and the things are not so nice, right? Just change them. That's precisely the thing. You get afraid when you have to make a change. And I found in my life something a bit more crazy. That is, that I never asked myself, what am I afraid of? So from telling that I'm afraid of heights, that I'm afraid of wild animals, I didn't know what else I'm afraid. Do you know? Well, it took me 1 year to discover that I'm afraid of rejection. Jesus, how do you discover that? Right? You really have to go a bit deeper. So trying to discover your fears is essential, because it's like a background software running in your head. You don't know it, you don't feel it. It just goes, and then you start building up stories to yourself like, I'm not a good seller. So if we have to make money in this company, do not count with me. I cannot sell. Right? Is that really true? Not necessarily, right? So find your fears, go deep, understand why you are limiting yourself. When you catch yourself limiting yourself, ask yourself, is that a fear? And if it is a fear, what can I do about it? And basically, once you discover the fear, it fades away. Then you discover other fears, of course. But it's never ending. But the thing is, you start solving some of the problems, and you start breaking up with the limitations that are around you. And with this, I'm going to finish. Through the events, we have made events in Ljubljana, in Nova Gorica, and in Vienna. I've met hundreds of entrepreneurs of all kinds, from startups to Babica trying to make marmalades and sell them. And in all the cases, the theme of fear and failure is truly essential. It is important to talk about it because we are not talking about it. As simple as that. Who is telling you how afraid they are to screw it up in the market, for example? So we are not talking about this. And if we go today to a pub or to wherever, I don't want to say Ricardo anymore, wherever, and start having a conversation, we're going to ask ourselves, how are we doing? Right? And we're going to say, and we're going to talk about the weather and this blah, blah, blah. Nothing so really important. when we start going deeper, and if I ask you with some beers beside or wines, what are you afraid of? Oh man, you don't know what is going to start coming up. And the conversation really starts there. And you know what happens? You start feeling connected with the persons who are talking. That's not spiritual, guys. Go to one of the fear and failure events and you will find it out. I'm not talking there, I promise. They are just 3 entrepreneurs telling their stories, each one in 15 minutes. And the crowd is completely connected. When they finish their talk, everyone is like friends. Why? What happens there? How strange. Well, what happens there is that there's a feeling called empathy. And empathy arises when vulnerability exists. So if someone is vulnerable, the others want to help him. So I said, okay, I'm going to make another event. It's called Pivot Meetup, where the people talks about their screwed business models. The same. So that's the answer. Why it's important to talk about fear and failure is because it enables connection. And this is what we're looking for. That's the reason why you are here, why I'm here. Because you are trying to find not only knowledge or potential experience, because everything I said you're going to forget, but because of the possibility of finding some person that is interesting to you, have a new relationship, eventually having a new job or opportunities, right? That's the reason why. So that's all for me. If you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer. Any questions? You can speak in Slovene. Razumem. Okay, thanks so much.